Just want to say, as it might be my last chance, that it's been an honour to do these reviews. What? Oh, we're not all doing these heartfelt, somber goodbye videos. Just the crew of the Discovery. Right?
There is a battle coming. The odds are not in our favor.
Captain Pike has always had faith that we play a part in some grand design.
All of you will face your destinies with bravery and honor.
I wish I had his certainty.
9 more enemy vessels just dropped out of warp.
Prepare for battle.
It's time.
Hi, I'm Phil. Welcome to my channel where I talk about all the geeky pop culture things I like, including Star Trek. And I've recently been doing, as you may well know, weekly reviews of new Star Trek Discovery, which have only got 1 week left. What am I going to do after that? Today I'm reviewing the episode Such Sweet Sorrow, the penultimate episode of Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. And it's kind of the calm before the storm. There's not that much action in this episode, and it's very much more a reflection of our characters and a sort of lot of personal reflection going on in this episode, which I think has both positives and negatives to it. I can see why they did it. We'll come to all of that. So we were left last episode with the decision being taken to blow up the Discovery to set the self-destruct. They've now rendezvoused with the Enterprise so that they can do this. While we're talking about this bit of the episode, though, we've got to talk about the Enterprise bridge, because wow, I mean, how fantastic was that? I'm assuming everyone liked it, but they might not. I'm sure there will be some people out there that don't like it. Don't forget to let me know if you don't. I'd love to hear your reasons. But personally, I loved it. I thought it was the perfect blend of old and new. It had the feel of the old series, but obviously you can't just recreate the old series. Even when they did that in the 90s, when they did it on DS9, or when they did it in the Enterprise, when they saw the other Constitution class ship. Can't get my words out today. They used the old design then, but it looked quite, it didn't match. It didn't feel like it belonged. So I'm glad that, they couldn't just leave it with the 60s design. It doesn't look like a space-worthy spaceship in that sense, existing in the world with the technology we see around it. So I'm quite glad they did an update, and I think they did a very respectful update. You've got lovely little design elements like the shape of the chairs, the turbolift having that little weird handle thing you for some reason have to turn when you want to tell it where to go. It had, lovely elements like that. The general shape and feel of the bridge was very much the same, but it looked like a futuristic spaceship, which the Enterprise from the original series, let's be honest, looks like a bit of a wooden set. And so in this set you had all the lovely technology, you had all the touch screens and things. It made it look real, but it also looked like it could belong, it looks like a proper 21st century update. Not like the J.J. Abrams movie, where it looked completely different, and not like the Discovery as well, where they didn't keep any sort of homages to the original, bar a few sound effects. Here, it very much feels like a nice blend of 21st century imaginings of the future and the 60s original, blended lovely together. I really wish Discovery had gone down this route with their own design initially. I think that was a mistake of the showrunners at the time, now completely different showrunners running the show. They should have done something like this for Discovery as well. One thing I wasn't too sure about, though, in this whole sequence was the docking procedure. It was the visuals and how the bridge came across. I don't know. Obviously, ships... I don't think we've ever seen two starships dock to each other before, but it was interesting to see. I'm not sure the way they visualized it worked. So all the crew go over to the Enterprise. They're going to blow up the Discovery. They set the self-destruct. They're all off the ship. Big surprise, it doesn't blow up. Now, I think everyone kind of predicted that was going to happen, because something had to go wrong. They weren't going to blow up their main series, the namesake of the series, the ship, in the 2 episodes to go to the end of the season, and they've already been renewed for a 3rd season. It just wasn't going to happen. So I think we all knew that was going to happen. It was a little bit predictable, but I think it was kind of alright. Predictable, but not in a really terrible way. They also try and shoot torpedoes at it, but the shields have gone up as well, and what it is basically they theorize that the sphere data has integrated more with the ship, and it's therefore trying to protect itself by using the ship systems to stop it being blown up. Now this kickstart the sort of slower pace of the episode, because that beginning part had all been quite frantic. Let's get off the ship, let's set the there was a little bit of tension and pace to that first bit, but from this point onwards until the very end, the pace very much slows down, and we start to move into that sort of more reflective tone that carries throughout the rest of the episode. So at this point they start to come up with their new plan, which involves taking the ship far into the future, and is going to involve building a new suit, and hey look, Michael's going to be the one in it. We haven't got that far yet, so that might be another red herring. But one of the things that I think a lot of people didn't want was for Michael to be the Red Angel. And she kind of isn't, because the Red Angel was her mum. The Red Angel that had appeared to everyone was the mum, but the mum didn't know about the signals. So the signals, at this point, look like they're going to be Michael. And you know what? Even though I didn't want the Red Angel to be Michael, and I was very much against that, this doesn't bother me as much as I thought it would. It kind of fits quite well narratively with the plot lines they've got going on. It doesn't feel forced. So surprisingly even to myself, because I really didn't want Burnham to be the one doing any of the jumping around time travelling, I'm actually okay with it. One thing I'm not okay about though is the whole, maybe I've missed something. Maybe I've missed a key bit of dialogue. But the signals. Okay, bear with me here, because originally we saw that map, we saw the signals appear, all 7 signals. They know there's 7 signals. They've seen several maps with them appearing. In that very first episode of season 2, we see them on the map of the universe, these 7 signals. And now they're following them as they appear. And there's 5, they've got to the 5th one now. But they already appeared, they already picked them up the first time. They know there's 7 of them. So they know where they are. I'm very confused why they're surprised every time a new one shows up and where it is. Because if they know there's 7, how do they know that if they don't know where it is, where they are? Maybe I've missed a key bit of dialogue there. If I have, please let me know in the comments. But it's been bugging me the last few episodes. Every time they mention a new signal, I'm thinking, well, you had 7 of them already. What do you mean a new one? What do you mean a new 5th one? You knew about 7 of them to start with. I also have another nitpick, specifically about this episode, and actually last episode as well, the Spore Drive. They made a big thing in the beginning part of this season about the damage that the Spore Drive is doing to the mycelial network and the spore creatures that live there. And they haven't mentioned it at all in this last half of this season, and they've used the Spore Drive several times. Presumably, every time they use it, there's more damage being done. They're endangering the lives of those creatures, that sentient life that they now know exists there. And, okay, yeah, they might need to. It might be an absolute emergency. They might decide that they need to do that, even though there might be those consequences. But they don't even mention it. They've never mentioned it once again since that whole storyline kind of wrapped up. But it's still presumably doing damage every time they jump. So it's a really annoying nitpick that they haven't at least... I can accept that there might be extenuating circumstances they need to use it, even though there's going to be consequences for... But there would be some kind of... Somebody would... Tilly, especially, would mention that and go, well, wait, do we really need to use this because these guys, it's like they've completely forgotten about that whole plot line. Things I did like the way they sort of folded in the plot line from one of the short tracks, Runaway. That was nice. It's good to see them getting rolled in, and so we have the Queen from that planet that Tilly had befriended when she stowed aboard the Discovery in those short treks. If you haven't seen them, I mean, this was probably the weakest one of them, but I like the fact that they're tying them in. And in fact, I'll come back to that actually, because I also want to say on this that Tilly, on that sort of side of things, Tilly, I think was really well used in this episode. I find Tilly a bit hit and miss sometimes in some episodes, and maybe it just depends on who's writing her. Some episodes, she can be really annoying, and then other episodes, I completely get, I get the character, and she feels like she's actually adding something. And, other times she just feels like she's there for comic relief and doesn't really feel like a proper character. This episode, she felt like a proper character, and her interactions with her friend Poe, was it? The Queen, were brilliant. And when she was introducing her in the transporter room to Michael and then to the captain, and just the way that Pike was sort of being all formal and diplomatic, and those Tilly and Poe were just embracing and chatting like they're best friends that haven't seen each other for a while. And I love that kind of contrast between the two of them there, Pike and Tilly. I think that worked really well, and other bits in this episode I think Tilly worked well as well. But yes, the short treks. So I believe this makes me think that Calypso definitely has to play into something in the plot somewhere, because every single other short trek has played into the plot of either something this season, or in the case of the Harry Mudd one, kind of played into, it was kind of a postscript on something from the previous season. But the other two, the one, Saru's one, played into the episode, obviously, where we go back to his planet, and the Runaway played into this episode. So Calypso, I'm expecting to play into the whole jumping forward plot. And also, don't forget that there was that comment about the Sphere Data program integrating itself with Discovery, and in Calypso's, Discovery has this really advanced AI that seems to have a personality. So I think that's probably going to play into it somehow. Maybe there's going to be some integration between the Sphere Data, Discovery's existing computer, and don't forget all Ariam's memories are still on there as in the computer systems as well. So I think all that could come together. Maybe we'll see that start to develop in the next season when they presumably get stuck in the future. Prediction that we'll come to in a minute. I think that all might come together as well. So it's quite nice the way they're tying in the short treks. What I did really like about this episode is that all the regulars, in this sort of moment of quiet before the big, what we presume is going to be quite an action-heavy season finale, all of the characters got something to, a moment or two. Whether or not that be something a bit more developed, like Tilly's, which had more time dedicated to it, like Tilly's plotline, or even Culber and Stamets, they had a lovely, I think, wrapping up of their storyline. I don't know if Culber's back for next season. I don't know if Stamets is back for next season. Culber's off the ship, Stamets still on the ship, so if they do get flung into it and stuck in the future, presumably Stamets is going to be in the future and Culber might not be in the show anymore. But I really love the way they sort of wrapped up their storyline, because, it would have been the easy thing to, have them make up and get back together and sort out all their problems by the end. And I'm really glad they didn't do that. It kind of feels more real to real life, that they've come to this realization quite maturely, no big drama, no massive fight at the end, just kind of come to the realization that they are better apart. And there was a really sort of mature, grown-up scene there between the two of them that added some closure to their relationship. So they got a lovely little bit. Jet Reno even had good stuff in this episode, and I said last week that I wasn't a massive fan of her character. Then I stand by that for last week. I don't think she was well used last week. Here, she's brilliantly used, and I think it's probably the best we've seen her. So even characters that I'm a bit iffy on sometimes are getting good stuff in this episode. Then we got Pike, who has a brilliant farewell speech when he's leaving the Enterprise, because they've decided that, Burnham's got to take the ship into the future. Various other members of the crew have decided to stay with her. I was unsure about that decision to start with. I mean, why do they need to? But there's some engineering things that, they do prove useful, so that's fine. Pike isn't staying, he's going back to the Enterprise because he's got a fate to fulfill that we all know about. He's going to end up in that wheelchair. So he's, back in his gold uniform saying goodbye to everyone, and that's a lovely speech that he gives there as well. And then everyone else kind of gets little moments here and there, including all of those goodbye messages, which I'm going to say dragged on too long. And I think this whole it kind of felt like a really, once they decided what they were doing, there was a really elongated goodbye period. Everyone saying goodbye to each other and and sending messages to other people to say goodbye. And it kind of felt like it dragged a little bit. It dragged the episode back a little bit in terms of, I know it was meant to be a more slow, reflective episode, and I'm fine with that, but I think they went too far in that direction. I think they could have maybe cut about 10 minutes of this episode out, maybe 5, and it would have felt a bit more. I wouldn't have started to get bored of all the goodbyes. And that's nothing against any of the performances of any of those individual messages of any of those characters that did any of those goodbyes. They were all lovely. There was just too many of them, or they went on too long. Something, I can't quite put my finger on which, but it just started to drag a little bit. Going back to Pike's speech though, because I've just remembered one other thing I was going to say. Why wasn't Saru made captain? I mean, he deserves it. It was heavily led up to. Pike was made his speech, included something about oh yeah, have to decide what happens with, captain, and it's very kind of hinting, and it very much felt like at the end of that, he would, or the next scene, you'd see him say, "Congratulations, Captain Saru," or something, but it didn't happen. It was just kind of deferred to later, and I don't know why. I mean, at least announce that he's temporary captain. I'm sure Pike has the power to do that. If he doesn't, you've got an admiral on the Enterprise. Get her to do it. She definitely has the power to make somebody a temporary captain. And say that say that you'll be recommending to Starfleet Command that he take the position. I know there's probably rules about these things, but you got an admiral. You got to get. I'm sure they could have done it. We get a nice tense cliffhanger at the end with all the Section 31 ships arriving. There's going to be a big battle. We've seen flashes of that with people touching the time crystal and seeing future visions Burnham and Jet Reno have. So it looks like next week's going to be a really action-packed episode. Ended on a really exciting cliffhanger this week, so I'm really excited for next week to see how they round up all this storyline. And are they going to go into the future? Because that's the prediction that pretty much everybody is having. The next season is going to be set completely in the future. So they're going to take the ship into the future to save the information from getting into Control's hands. And they're going to stay there. And we're going to have at least a season of them in the future, if not the rest of the show. So that will be interesting to see. And I anticipate a very action-packed episode next week for that. This week, I think they were going for a more reflective, sort of slower tone to give space for all the action next week. So, if they'd ended the season without doing the character stuff and without doing the goodbyes, it would have felt a bit hollow. And I'm guessing that they want to keep next week free from that to really focus on the action. And there's not going to be much time for things like that. So they've decided to put it in this episode. So I kind of get what they were going for. I think maybe it could have been a bit shorter. Maybe they could have slightly structured it a bit better. But on the whole, it was an enjoyable episode. So, and certainly an exciting lead into next week. Anyway, that's what I think. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And I'll be back for my final Season 2 review next week. So do hit that subscribe button, share this video if you like it as well, hit that like button, and all that jazz, and I will be back next week. In the meantime, you can check out some of my other videos here. I cover other topics like Doctor Who. I like talking about Doctor Who a lot, so if you like Doctor Who, here's a Doctor Who video. And here's another thing YouTube thinks you might like. I will see you next week, hopefully. Goodbye.